Being an empath is not a birthright. It can be trained. That's what this video is going to be about. And if you stay with me through to the end, you'll learn a great deal of cool stuff. We're going to be talking about how sensitivity is in fact a superpower, but it might also be your personal kryptonite. What makes it one versus the other? And how can we actually train empathy or the empath in a way that doesn't lead to overwhelm or breakdown or retreat, but leads to almost this super ability to remain in contact, to feel everything without being destroyed by it. It's an amazing topic. Let's get into it. So if this is your first time here, you might have seen me, you might have seen Lindsay, my cohort, and some of the other videos. We have a somatic coaching academy, applied somatics as we like to call it, or maybe even performance somatics, which is the premise that the soma dictates the psyche in real time. And there's two components to this. One is the architecture that's built over time. How do you cultivate it through, let's say, strength training or flexibility training or through breath work? Over time, this builds an architecture that winds up expressing as personality. And that's where we focus, is the relationship between these two things. If you can start to understand the architecture and how you can express in real time, it gives you access to range. You can be anybody in this moment. It's not dictated necessarily by your prior environments or your traumas or who you think you are in the world. There's fluidity in that, and this video is going to focus on one of the four archetypes that we focus on. There's the warrior, the sage, the shapeshifter, and today, the asset, also known as the empath. We like to distinguish between the two of them for one key reason. The empath is a powerful archetype, but oftentimes it's identified with for negative reasons. I feel overwhelmed, I'm sensitive, I can't control my emotions, I'm empathic. Well, kind of. Also a hot mess, a little bit of both. But the asset in our category has the same attributes. Highly sensitive, highly attuned, extremely strong intuition, but one key difference. The asset has agency, sovereignty, and the ability to remain in contact in a way that allows sensitivity to become a true asset versus a liability. This is what we train at the Prestige. This is what we do with high performers and people in various domains that might fall into this skin. If you don't know your skin, we have a quiz. It's gosh darn accurate. There might be nuances because we can cultivate all of these skins, but the best place to start is to know what you test at. Even in this 15-question quiz, it takes 2 minutes. Within the Prestige, we do another layer or two of this. We also assess the psyche. We also assess capacity in each one of the skins. Because even if you are dominant, you can be of low capacity in that skin or high capacity in that skin. And that will often dictate your ability to maintain coherence and express in that skin under pressure. So if you haven't done it yet, pause, take the quiz real quick, come back, know whether or not you are in fact an asset or whether it is just something that feels resonant. Now you might also be an asset and it might be an underdeveloped skill or capacity for you. So let's get into the weeds a little bit here. I'm armed with my pen, my paper. We'll talk about a little bit of theory. We'll also talk about in practice how this works. So let's say that you are an empath. I said at the beginning it's not a birthright. In some ways it is a birthright. Some people actually do have higher levels of sensitivity. Some people do have larger nerves than other people. They can feel more, transmit more, sense more naturally. Some people acquire it young through circumstance or through traumatic experiences or through the need to navigate environment through sensing. And their mind wasn't in a place where they could reason necessarily, or their body wasn't strong enough to resist. So they feel a way through these problems. It's a superpower, as I mentioned, but the more we start to feel, if we don't have a protective layer, the more we become overwhelmed, the more minor sensations have massive impact on how we feel. So a lot of people have to retreat and escape stress, and they have to escape pressure. It can be fine if you're living in Bali or you've got plenty of time, to go on holiday, but for the rest of us, this is a skill that we need to be able to sustain when it matters under pressure. So this is a real phenomenon, but it's important to say this. It's a skill at the end of the day. Now, if you're unaware of the skill or you don't know how to cultivate it, you tend to think it's just what you are or what you aren't. And some people are empaths, and those are my people. And some people are warriors. Don't quite like those guys. They can be assertive and aggressive. Okay. But if we take a step back and we say, well, what actually comprises the skill of an empath? We say, well, it's empathy. It's connection. It's the ability above all the other skins to remain in contact and sensitive to an environment, to other people. Maybe my mirror neurons are more sensitive or more developed than somebody else's. I can feel and read nuance and mimic other people in different ways. That's where maybe the shapeshifter would enhance the asset and the mimicking factor. But the skill then, bare bones, basic sensitivity. So the first stage then of developing the empath is to look at the primary skill of that skin, which is sensitivity. Now, there are plenty of ways to cultivate this. There are relaxation practices, there are meditative practices. Focus, in some cases, can even do that as well. But generally speaking, it is the practice of opening and expanding your attention with non-judgment. It's a receptivity to the field, to other people, to the environment. Okay? As such, we use one key practice within the Prestige. And again, there are others, but I've spent decades looking at countless practices, looking at all types of different systems. The one that I go back to, the one that we teach our clients, is very basic, and it looks at capacity in a way that cannot be hacked. How long does it take you to complete your 10 slowest breaths? There's a lot that goes into this, and in our book, also in the description below, the Somatic Skins, there are pages around how this works at a physiological level, a psychological level, what slow breathing does to open you up and increase your sensation and sensitivity and sensory awareness. Again, other practices can do this. Mindful awareness among the best of them, but there's one key problem. It isn't measured, and it usually isn't measurable. Well, how much data are you actually taking in compared to last time? Am I aware of more data points? What can I measure that increases the probability of me owning sensitivity in the moment? It's not a question that's ever asked. It's just, well, he's sensitive, he's not sensitive. Period. End of discussion. Okay, but this is on a spectrum because you're more sensitive today perhaps than you were 10 years ago because you've had more life experience, because you've taken on certain types of practices. So if you've moved the needle, we're talking about a spectrum, right? We're not talking about either or. And if we're talking about a spectrum, then in theory, there is a way to say, well, okay, we can make marginal improvements. But how do we know that and how do we measure them? This is how we do it. Increasing the length of the breath gives you more space per unit of time to sense, to feel, to be aware. Okay, it also does things physiologically, like it slows down the pulse. It opens the body up to become more sensitive, literally, because you are removing tension in order to increase the length of the breath. This is not an overnight practice. This takes weeks to months to get good at. But as you start to get good at it, you're slowing things down. You're creating space in the mind-body to sense more and feel more because you have to reduce tension in order to elongate the breath. If you're burning oxygen at a quick rate, and that's what happens when you're tense, when you're doing physical activity, you start upper chest breathing. You start breathing more quickly, but slowing that down, abdominal breathing, right? What the mystics all teach. It's going to downregulate the system. You're going to survey for tension in the body. You're going to remove tension. Stress is going to drop. And within that, you start to relax, and sensation is a necessary outcropping of that experience. So it isn't the thing that necessarily gets released immediately or in the moment, but it's a byproduct of elongating the breath and the mechanisms that you have to activate to do so. The explicit details of that are all in the book, as I mentioned, but it really is just slowing down the breath, abdominal breathing, making sure that you've got good structural integrity, removing all unnecessary tension, and then elongating. The first thing to shoot for is 5 minutes. Can you extend your 10 slowest breaths beyond 5 minutes? I consider that an intermediate level of training. What that indicates is that you have enough capacity in this category to actually start to utilize this with intention, sensitivity with intention. That's where you move from being an empath to being an asset on training wheels. I can start to activate this when I need to now. It doesn't own me. It doesn't control me. I'm not pushed from one thing to another and just feeling overwhelmed all the time. I can start to say, okay, I'm choosing to activate it, or maybe this isn't the right time now to fully implement. That's a great threshold. The next one comes at 8+ minutes, which is a high level. If you can do 8+ minutes, and I've had some clients that have gotten to 13 minutes for their 10 slowest breaths with control, and they were exhibiting all kinds of crazy intuitive skills and cool stuff. Now we're talking about mastering that skin, that one skin. Now you have control over your ability to access sensitivity in the moment. That is where we start to look at the other skins. So I'm going to do a little bit of drawing for you because it's important to understand how these work together. If you were to remain in one category, like if you're the empath and you remain in the quadrant of empathy, and you don't start to first cultivate the sage and then start to cultivate the warrior and the shapeshifter, you remain unbelievably fragile because the thing that we just discussed keeps happening. I'm more sensitive, I'm doing the meditation, I'm finding my peace, but why do I feel constantly overwhelmed and triggered and I don't know how to deal with life? The reason is because you are becoming more sensitive, you're opening yourself up, and you don't know how to filter shit. So all of it hits, and then that becomes a way of just holding on and not being able to let things flow through. We'll get to that in terms of the shapeshifter, but let me draw a diagram for you. Okay, so we're going to look at the quadrant system of the somatic field. This is a homegrown methodology within the Prestige as we teach it, and it's an active model, meaning we apply it with every person that we coach, and it improves their performance very quickly in a way that gives them power and focus and sensitivity in real time when they want it. It's great stuff. So let me get into this. The quadrant looks something like this. Y-axis, X-axis, we've got warrior, we've got sage, don't judge the writing, we've got shapeshifter, we've got asset, or if you want to be stubborn, empath. Now all of these skins have their own attributes and their own powers, and the whole point of this isn't that you belong to one or that you live in one of these forever. The point is that we all contain the somatic range of each profile. The way to start this process is to first be honest, to know how you orient, and then we start the process of cultivation and training. Okay, and again, the training process is critical. Like, you want to be a Jedi, right? You might have more midi-chlorians than the next guy, but if he goes to Dagobah and trains with Yoda, and you sit at home eating potato chips, guess who's going to be better? He's going to be a better Jedi, sorry. So, first step is knowing what these axes mean. So we've got the axis of consciousness, or attention, as I often call it. We could call this the axis of tension, or even structure. I use these interchangeably. I'm not too married to either one. They both matter. But we need to know which axis we're on first. So the empath is on the axis of attention, meaning they are dominated neurologically. Their nervous system is oriented around attunement of the eyes and the sensory field. Okay? The other one, the y-axis, is oriented around tension, structure, and relaxation. It's more embodied, but the other one, our axis, is oriented around attention. Now there are two modes here that are critical, okay? The asset is oriented around expansive, so if here's the head, here's the eyes, body, I'm looking this way, boo, 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 boo. This is the field of attention for the empath. It's expansive, it's receptive, it's non-judgmental, it's broad. I'm sensing, I'm feeling, I'm processing so much more than my brain can dissect and identify. But that's why I have strong intuition and I can navigate things without knowing how I navigate them sometimes. It's incredible. But the problem, again, is it lets in too much. So on the other end of this axis, we have the sage, okay? Now the skill of the sage, here's the eyes looking this way. is a narrowing of focus, a narrowing of attention. You find this skill in mathematics and science and chess and all the things where it doesn't help me to open up my senses and feel more. I need to hone in and focus. This goes back a long time. Our vision, our ocular focus is built this way, to survey the horizon, to sense more, to look for maybe prey, and then to go in for the hunt with clear focus. It's how the eyes fluctuate constantly. I've talked about this in other videos, but it's how we oscillate as well between alpha and theta brainwave states constantly. Only the asset spends more time in theta and the sage spends more time in alpha. These are trainable windows. So, I already discussed how we cultivate the asset. We need to open ourselves up, release, and sense more, and that cultivates sensitivity, but sensitivity without structure or focus becomes a liability. So now we focus. The skill that we use for this is reverse counting. It's literally counting backwards, visualizing the count. 100, 99, 98, seeing it in the center, not opening and expanding my field of attention, but narrowing and focusing on that number only. The challenge here is obvious. It's boring. It's monotonous. You won't want to do it. Obviously, it sucks. It's the only way to measure true attention. Attention doesn't matter if you're doing stuff that you enjoy. That's passion, right? You like playing a video game. You can do that for 3 hours, but you can't focus in a conversation. Well, guess what? You just like playing video games. You don't like listening to so-and-so. That's not a skill, okay? That's a passion. Everybody can do things they enjoy doing, but focus and concentration as a skill means that you can activate it and do it even if you don't like the subject matter. And that's why this is an incredible skill to practice. Our metrics for this: 300 is entry level, 500 is first metric, 800 or higher is exceptional focus, but that's like 55 minutes of counting if you do it at that pace. True focus. Now, there are nuances to how we train it. You don't just go up and progress. You take your time progressing because you want to honor the process. And what will happen is the mind will start to jump and you'll miscount here and there. And you don't get to progress if you're making these kinds of mistakes. We spell out exactly how this process works in the book. There are pages around the neurology, the psyche, the soma, how all of these come together in one practice to cultivate the sage. But here's what you need to know as the empath. Once you start to do this and be able to hone in, all of a sudden, this influx, this barrage of sensation, of data, of stuff I don't quite know what all of it is, starts to become filtered in 2 categories: signal, meaningful; noise, avoid it. And I have conscious control. So now the empath is starting to become empowered a little bit. I go out into arenas. I'm in hard conversations that would have triggered me and crippled me, but not so much now because I see I'm already sensitive to who the person is in front of me, but now I'm starting to filter. Okay, they're not necessarily attacking me. Okay, we have agreements. These are the key points of what they're trying to communicate. This is what matters. This is how we orient around each other. And you start to see those nuances in real time, and you don't take it on. This is what happens, by the way, in older Qigong practices. When I used to teach weightlessness, the evolution is from breath work into mindful awareness, into concentration practice, into Qigong, which is the ability to work all of these in tandem. But Qigong has the same benefit, which is armoring. You become highly sensitive. You have to be if you're doing energy work, but it creates, we could say unwilling, you want it, but it isn't by intention. It just starts to happen that you unintentionally armor. You're protected, so you can still feel, but you don't absorb somebody's negativity, and you don't interpret all things personally. You're shielded from a lot of the stuff that would have had maybe emotional or personal impact. That's incredible. And as you know, think of the sages in your life. Think of those people that are focused. You know how they go through life. They're calm, right? They're not riled very easily, right? And they tend to think through things before they tend to respond to emotion. Yes, that is the filter that the empath needs. Exactly that. And it's the first thing that we balance because these are on the same spectrum. It's the spectrum of consciousness moving between these two things. And it should be obvious, you know, by virtue of this practice, that the sage first has to cultivate the asset. The sage walks around like their body is a brain taxi. They don't feel anything down here. It's all up here, right? And they're not aware of what's going on necessarily, but it's all through reason and calm focus, so on and so forth. Ready for more? Let's go on to the other axis. This is cool stuff. Now, there's an argument or a case to be made for both the warrior and the shapeshifter in terms of a next step. I will always default to the warrior first. Not because I'm biased, but because in all the coaching that I've done over decades, the warrior gives you access to all of the skins by sheer will, grit. Once it's cultivated, you can access everything much more easily. And it also winds up bypassing the liabilities of the shapeshifter, which is helpful. So let's look at that. The attribute now of the warrior. As we said, we've got tension and we've got structure. Structure literally is the stacking of the bones. And the balance between these two, we put standing meditation right here in the center. The balance between warrior and shapeshifter is the structure that removes the force of gravity and the relaxation that removes the tension, the unnecessary tension of holding yourself upright. This is the state that gives you access to all four skins in real time. We call it centering, right? But centering is only as good as what it allows you to do. What happens after centering? That's what we have to choose. Which skin am I going to move into? Okay, so we start to develop these two things, and what this does is it takes the sensitivity of the asset and it starts to numb it a little bit. Why is numbing it good? It's debatable, but let's say as a skill, let's talk about this as a skill now and not say this is an absolute necessity that you just need to be a numb individual. No, but the warrior is able to mobilize action. And the biggest problem of the empath is that I have all the feels today. Man, that thing is incredible. It's so exciting. I want to do that, but I wake up tomorrow and you know what? I feel a little bit less aligned with it than I did yesterday. Well, great. What does that look like? I mean, if you haven't put anybody, if you haven't locked anybody into that commitment or put anything down or nothing is on the line, okay, we all waffle. But a lot of times this can show up as a lack of integrity. I feel this today, I don't feel this tomorrow. Sorry, the feelings just changed. Benefit of the warrior. Okay, the feelings are there present at the beginning. And they give me the insight and the alignment. But the warrior now gives me the ability to mobilize action and commitment for that thing. In a lot of ways, the warrior is what has evolved to protect the asset. These two need each other, and the warrior without the asset is callous and rigid. The warrior with the asset is sensitive, adaptable, right? They feel all the things, but they're still able to remain in contact. It's the relationship between the two. But to train the empath into the x-axis, and starting with the warrior, we look at structure and we look at tension. A lot of things can do this. Even yoga practices can do this when you've got heavily structured stances and then you're adding tension, which happens at the back end of every effort, right? As soon as you start to struggle with a pose, what happens? Muscles go like this and like this and like this and like this to sustain it, and you're structured at the same time. That's how yoga does this. Martial arts, CrossFit, powerlifting do it on the other side, which is how do we condense the window of tension and fail faster? They all get there in the end. But what's key here is how do we pick one prime mover so that we understand it? At a low level, we might look at something like the horse stance, which you find modified but similar things in yoga, and then you've got it in the martial arts. This is a structured posture that puts the body at mechanical disadvantage, and a lot of tension is required to hold up, and the first things that give, eyes drop, shoulders cave, right? The system starts to shake and unravel. But as soon as we start to get a little bit stronger, we're able to hold that structure together. And now all of a sudden, we can be in contact with stress and pressure without giving up who we are and our ability to remain coherent in that moment. If that isn't an obvious advantage for an empath, you're in the wrong place. I got nothing for you. This is huge. The empath that is able to remain in contact with pressure without collapse, without their vision going diffuse, without feeling everything, without the eyes starting to divert, without the breath rising in the chest, and without melting structurally, which is what happens. All of these things start to take place. But here, up, eyes focused, and now open at the same time. Fucking superpower. We're talking Jedi territory here. This is very cool stuff. So the horse stance is a great entry-level practice. At higher levels, the deadlift is probably the single best practice you can do, which is nothing more than gripping it and ripping it. Grabbing a bar, heavily weighted, and let's say your 1 to 3 rep max. Boom, standing up with it. There's a lot of nuance in the deadlift. It's a highly technical skill. You have to train it properly. It helps to have coaching, but even to watch videos, look at yourself in video, make sure that your structure is aligned properly. And then the amount of tension that your system has to carry, boom, to complete the lift, is what cultivates the skill. You can do it in yoga and you can do it in other practices, but the farther you deviate from structure, like if you go from yoga to aerobics, now your system is not learning organization, structural organization. And if you go from things that are immediately and heavily tension-based to things that extend the tension, like a long hold pose in yoga, well, now we're starting to give the system mixed signals. It doesn't make them bad at all. It's just that if you want one thing that does it all, this teaches your nervous system to organize 100%. Structure, tension, complete sympathetic activation, right? The empath is the master of parasympathetic downregulation and processing, relaxing, feeling, sensing, healing. But the warrior is the master of sympathetic arousal. Boom, the whole system has to activate. The breath is heaving, the eyes are focused and fixed, and everything in the body is able to organize and lock in. Deadlift is the best, okay? All right, we're getting close here. Thanks for staying with me. I mean, but it's cool shit, right? I think it's cool stuff. The shapeshifter. The shapeshifter does two things, especially after we've already looked at the warrior, all right? So, the shapeshifter gives us access to relaxation, to fluidity. If we've got grit, we've got tension, we've got structure on the one side, the shapeshifter now is the opposite. I've talked about this in other videos. Muscles do two things, that's it. They are not smart, they don't remember things. They go like this. Our nervous system does, our muscles, not so much. Tension, myosin and actin fibers come together. Relaxation, they move apart. Boom, we're talking about two sides of the same coin, the same equation. You gotta learn both to have stability, coherence in the body. But, and this is critical, if we go back to our little dude, I'll draw the dude over here. The dude for the warrior structure is a rising force in the body. For the shapeshifter, and this, put these two together, you got standing meditation, but relaxation is a sinking force in the body. You put these two together through the practice of standing meditation, you have something called tensegrity. Tensegrity is the balance of rising and falling forces. In the body, these are represented by compression and tension members. Tension members are tendons and ligaments and soft tissue, fascia in the body, and compression members are the bones. And if you look at this, if you remove all the skin and all that jazz, you don't wind up with a body that's stacked bone on top. It's not how we stand. Everything is free floating and structurally fluid. Too much tension, we become rigid and brittle. Too much fluidity, and the same thing. The body doesn't have any structure to it. We can easily get injured. So this is fascinating. But the right balance in the body, which is what we cultivate through standing meditation, now is effortless symmetry. I've got the structure, but I have no excess tension that hinders me from feeling, from moving, and then I release. And I literally feel those forces. The structural setting is a rising force, but then I feel the release and the connection with the ground as soon as I activate relaxation. The two of these together now give me access, boom, to the empath's highest skill. Sensitivity that is now functional. But I missed one point. The shapeshifter. Thank you for the rant. Look, this stuff is unscripted. Don't care. Part of this is probably me working out my own It's therapy for me. This is fun stuff, right? The shapeshifter. The shapeshifter physically is dominated through relaxation, but as we talked about, a somatic profile is not a physical phenomenon. These are psychosomatic. The architecture of the body creates character, personality, tendency, pattern through repetition that I start to express at. Now, what you could take this guess for yourself. What happens when somebody's a practiced warrior? What is their mind like? Are they fluid in conversation, or are they fixed and driven? Well, yeah, that's what is built into their nervous system through years of training or just through environmental pressure. Shapeshifter is at the other end of this, which is that they're fluid. They're not very fixed, and a lot of times they can represent or present as flaky people that maybe are untrustworthy, but hey, they're the life of the party and they're a blast to hang out with. That's at a low level. At a high level, the shapeshifter looks like Bruce Lee, or somebody that is an incredible performer, but also extremely sensitive to environments and very adaptable, right? But the psychology of the shapeshifter is based on non-attachment. So when we start to cultivate fluidity and relaxation in the body, the mind stops holding on to fixed notions and ideas. This is an incredible thing. This is an incredible thing. Now we go back. The biggest issue, we talked about this initially for the empath, is that I feel all this stuff and I can't filter signal from noise. That's why I needed the sage, but I can't filter all this stuff. And so I take it on. Now what happens when we've got that persona, but we add the shapeshifter to it, and all of a sudden now I'm not identifying with all of the triggers and the stimuli that I'm receiving. It's only a problem when I say, okay, that's me, or that's not what I think, or I disagree with that. If I don't feel anything about that thing, if I'm not attached to the idea in here, what happens? It just flows through you, right? A river flowing past rocks. And that's incredible, because these two things, access to the warrior, gives the empath the ability to shield. And if we need to, we can say numb. This might not be taken the right way by everybody, but it's critical to say that that's not mine. I don't need to take that on. Or to even say in this moment, I'm adding a little bit of tension to the system so that I can even stay engaged. Because look, sometimes you're in a conversation and the best thing isn't to run away and play victim. Sometimes the best thing is to stay present, and you have to just be there anyway, and you don't want to be there. And that requires maybe 80% of you, but not 100% in the way that you're going to feel everything. Maybe it requires 80%. I just reduce the sensitivity a little bit. But I structure myself and I have enough tension to be able to stay present. Maybe it requires the other thing. Maybe it's the conflict itself is a byproduct of me holding on too tight, and I need to relinquish control, and I need to relinquish my own attachments. That's the sinking force of relaxation. That's the shapeshifter being a layer 2 on top of the empath. All right, look, if you've made it this far, congratulations. This is a mad serpentine rant. I kind of go everywhere with these things, but hey, it's what makes me enjoy showing up to the video. I don't like the overly structured stuff, and I'm super passionate about this. If you're passionate too, we coach people on this stuff. It's amazing. Look us up at The Prestige. We're about to start a new season in a couple of weeks here. We have incredible events that introduce you to versions of yourself and introduce somatic range as a way of, look, when we did it as kids, our evolution was based on all of the things that we're experiencing, and we start to then orient around our environments and our parents and our schools and our friend groups. And these increase range until they don't. And when they don't anymore, they become a cage for us, and then we only hang out. I'm an athlete, I only hang out with athletes. I'm a yogi, I only hang out with yogis and the sensitive types. And on and on. I'm a chess player, I hang out with the dorks. We meet our people, and then we do those things, and we stop asking, well, what actually made me go into this place in the first place, right? Part of it's interest, but a lot of it is circumstantial. The events reintroduce that ability. We create new environments almost every month where now you get to experience it. The first one is going to be the poison path. Amazing, the poison path, which hopefully triggers something obvious for you. The premise is that the things that we avoid often own us, and then leaning into them, maybe in a way that is marginal but intentional, inoculates us against the things that we fear. Fucking brilliant. But you gotta feel it first. It's not an idea. It's a somatic skill. After that, we've got somatic, rise of the asset. Everything that we talked about in this conversation is what you're going to feel and sense and be in that event. Incredible premise. And we've got dark Alice, the quickening, how breath impacts perception and interpretation in the moment. We go through the full range of breathing and also experience. And then street shaman. Oh man, street shaman. Can we accept the truth if it doesn't come in a form that we expect it to be in? Amazing premise, but it's not up here. How do we process it in real time? Okie dokie. Yeah, and obviously coaching and cool stuff in the books, and it's an amazing place. But anyway, we work with awesome people. If you're an awesome person, think about it. Check us out. If you take the quiz, it'll tell you your skin, but it'll also put you on the newsletter where you can learn about what we do and how we can help you. Even if it's not ideal for you right now, it might be in the future. So connect with us. We're decent types. All right. Thanks for staying. Like and subscribe if you haven't. It'll get you more cool stuff like this. Lindsay's amazing in all of her videos. I try my best, but we'll see you in the next video. Thanks for watching.